lesson 4-6. Today we're going to be talking about negative exponents. Now, when you think about raising a number to a power, there's a certain pattern going on every time. Like if I raise 2 to the third power, you'd multiply it out and you'd get 8. If you multiply 2 to the second power, you'd get 4. 2 to the first power gives you 2. Now, with that, we're going in a pattern. Every time we do one less power, we're dividing by 2, because that means there's 1 less 2 in this next one. So we're going to divide by 2, 8 by 2, and get 4. Divide 4 by 2 and get 2. And then if I divide 2 by 2, I'm going to get 1. So 2 to the 0 power is 1. But if we're talking about a negative exponent, what are we going to have? So if I divide 1 by 2, I'm going to be left with 1/2. So with negative exponents comes fractions and decimals. So this means that we're talking about a portion of something. So we're not talking about a whole number, we're talking about a part of something. So if you are going to change a negative exponent to a positive exponent, this was how you would go about it. In the last lesson, when we divided two numbers raised to the power, and if they had the same base, you subtract the exponents. So in this case, our smaller number of exponents is on the top, and the bigger number of exponents is on the bottom, which is the opposite of what we were doing in last lesson. So if I was to subtract 4 minus 6, you're going to get -2. So 3 is going to be raised to the -2 power. So if I want to change this negative power to positive, all you have to do is put this number in the denominator of a fraction, and that'll change it to positive. Because if you're canceling out, you know that you're going to have 2 left on the bottom because there's more 6. So then you'd have 3 to the second power in the denominator, and then you can solve it out if you want. So 3 times 3 gives you 9. So 1/9 or 1/3 squared. Both of those will give you a positive exponent. So if you want to deal with positives, that's what you'll do. Now, if you're going to change a positive exponent to a negative exponent, this is what you would do. You would start with a number like 1/64. So then you'd find the prime factorization and write it in exponential form, or with exponents. So it would be 1/2 to the 6th power, which gives you 64. So if I wanted to change this to a negative, you just pull it into the numerator and you have 2 to the -6th power. Now, you're also going to be dealing with decimals. And so, if you're talking about a decimal without a whole number, you're only talking about a part of 1. So this is 1/1000th of something. So it's a very small part. So, if we are going to write the decimal as a fraction, we'd have to move it to the denominator because we're talking about a part of something. And then we would have to move our decimal place over 1, 2, 3 spaces, which means we have 3 zeros. So this is 1/1000th, and then you can go ahead and factor it out to get the prime factorization and write it as an exponent. So 1/10 to the 3rd power, or you can move it up into the numerator and say 10 to the -3rd power. So basically what we're doing is just like basic practice now, so that later when we're confronted with some more challenging issues, we'll know what to do when we see fractions and negative exponents. We'll know how to manipulate the equation to solve. So let's go ahead and do some examples. Alright, let's look at our first example. In these first two examples, we are going to be changing our numbers to having a negative exponent to having a positive exponent. So let's go ahead and look at our process. So if we have 5 raised to the -2 power, what we need to do is make a fraction and write it in the denominator. So now it's 5 squared. So 1/5 squared is the positive form of 5 to the -2nd power. Alright, so if we have t raised to the -6th power, we just have to move it to the denominator and we all of a sudden have a positive exponent. So 1/t to the 6th power. That will be our answer. Now these next two problems, we want to go ahead and change it from a positive exponent to a negative exponent. So in order to do that, we just move it out of the denominator. So instead of being 1/3 to the 4th power, it's going to be 3 to the -4th power. To make 1/49, we have to first go ahead and change it to an exponent because we don't have any exponents, so we need to do prime factorization. So we would break down 49, we know it's 7 times 7, or 7 squared. So it's 1/7 squared. and we want to go ahead and make it negative, so we just move it up into the numerator, and all of a sudden your exponent is negative. So 7 to the negative 2 power is our final answer for that one. Alright, with this word problem down here, we're going to work with a decimal. So we're going to try to move the decimal into a fraction. So it says a unit of measure called a micron equals about 1,000th of a millimeter. Write using negative exponents. So we're going to change this decimal into a fraction, and then we're going to make it into a negative exponent. So if we are going to make this into a fraction, we do 1 over 1,000. And we know that because the 1 is in the thousandths place. So we want 1,000th. So now we're going to go ahead and change this denominator into an exponent. So we're going to have to do 1 over 10 to the third power. Now remember, when you're using tens and things like that, you just write 10 and raise it to the power of the number of zeros you have. So 10 to the third power is 3 zeros after the 1, which is 1,000. So now let's go ahead and make it negative. So in order to make it negative, we put it in the numerator. If we want it to be positive, we put it in the denominator. So let's go ahead and move it to the numerator. It's going to be 10 to the negative third power. That's our final answer. Alright, now let's go ahead and try to apply this stuff with variables. So we're going to plug in numbers for variables and solve. So if we have b to the negative third power, the first thing you always need to do is plug in what your variable is equal to. So b is equal to negative 3. So we're going to do negative 3 to the negative third power. So let's go ahead and solve. So right now we have a negative exponent, and it's best to just work with, well, sometimes easier to work with negative or positive exponents by putting it in the denominator, so that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to put 1 over negative 3 to the third power. So it doesn't change the sign of my whole number, it just changes the sign of my my exponent. So now if I did 3 to the third power, I'm going to have 1 over 27. And since we are multiplying negative 3 times, which is an odd number, our answer is going to be negative. So negative 1 over 27 is our final answer for that one. Alright, this one we have another operation to do in addition. So we have a and b here, and anytime you have a and b right by each other, or variables right by each other, it always means multiplication. So we're doing a times b. So a is 2 and b is negative 3. So we're going to do 2 times negative 3, all of that raised to the negative second power. So let's go ahead and with the order of operations, we start with parentheses. So we need to do what's inside the parentheses first, then we can do exponents. So 2 times negative 3 is going to give you a negative 6. So we have to keep that in our parentheses because we're raising this whole thing to the negative 2 power. So now if we have negative 6 raised to the negative 2 power, the next step we need to do is make it a positive exponent. So we're going to do 1 over negative 6 squared. And our last step is to square our negative 6. So negative 6 times negative 6 is going to give you a positive 36. So 1 over 36 is our final answer. As always, make sure you have all of your notes done. Make sure that if you have any questions, rewind it, watch it again, look in your book at more examples. And as always, you can bring your questions into class. I'll be happy to answer them. Now let's go ahead and do some on your own questions. Alright, you have 5 problems to solve for me. Okay, number 1, you need to change negative 7 raised to the negative first power and write it as a positive exponent. For numbers 2 and 3, you need to change the fraction into a positive exponent. And then numbers 4 and 5, you need to go ahead and solve those equations with variables and get the final answer. Good luck. We'll see what you get tomorrow.